I've written a lot of books, and over time, as often happens with books, a lot of the early ones especially have actually gone out of print, which is always a little bit sad. However, what is happening right now is a lot of those early books are coming back into not print but into ebooks and are available again. And this video is to announce that my very first book is now available in ebook, and it's one which is very dear to my heart, and it's this one. It's the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. It's my rendering of this ancient Chinese classic, and this is dear to my heart because it's my very first book. It's also dear to my heart because it's a book I love. I started reading the Tao Te Ching, which, if you don't know it, is a collection of sayings, Taoist sayings, attributed to the sage Lao Tzu. Very old, 500 BC is when he is supposed to have lived. And it's not a coherent book in the sense that there's not a philosophy you follow through, but it's inspirational. It's these little drops of profound insight, and it has a real beauty to it. And I came across it, I guess, when I was 15 or 16 or, I don't know, a teenager, and loved it. I had a black and white version with these fantastic photographs in, which were very evocative, which I had by my bedside, and then I created a little altar for myself as a teenager, and I had my favourite books, T.S. Eliot's The Four Quartets and the other scriptures, the Bhagavad Gita, and there the Tao Te Ching, and of all of them the Tao Te Ching was my favourite. So it was a marvellous piece of magic that I had the chance to do this version, my own version of the book, and that it was my first book, and that it's now available again. And what I set out to do was to see, there's two ways of approaching translation, it seems to me, and most translations kind of move between the two. One is that you try to capture the original work in its historical context. And that's a really skilled thing to do, because to actually put yourself into the mindset and understand how human beings were thinking hundreds and hundreds of years ago, who didn't have the concepts we have, especially in a completely different language, is an incredibly skilled and perhaps impossible thing to do. That's one side of translation. And then there's another side, and this form of translation is to go, in this particular text, there's something human and perennial which speaks to something deep within us and which has stayed the same. And what we want to do with the translation is actually create the same sense of, oh, that these words would have originally had, but today. So embedding them in too much of the historical contexts means they don't do that anymore, because they seem ancient or classic or remote or foreign. For that form of translation to work, it has to come right up to date and hit you in the face, just like it did when these words were first spoken or written down. And that's the sort of translation that inspired me to do my version of the Tao Te Ching, based on what people like Coleman Barks had done so fantastically with Rumi. Nearly all of the Rumi that people quote is Coleman Barks, who has done that very job on Rumi, or Robert Bly, who I got to spend some time with, as I have Coleman, who did it with Kabir, the Indian sage and poet. So I set out to do this with the Tao Te Ching, and in that beautiful way that magic happens sometimes in life, I sent a small extract from what I was working on to a literary agent that a friend had put me in touch with, and it arrived on her desk at the same time as another letter from a publisher saying, we're doing a series of Chinese classic books, we'd like a new version of the Tao Te Ching. And there was my version of the Tao Te Ching, and there was the letter on her desk. And she sent my version to Martin Palmer at Manchester University, where he's an expert on ancient Chinese, and he looked at my version and loved it. So he was able to supervise it in terms of its historical context particularly, and I was able to bring out its simple spiritual essence. So here it is. This is not the original cover even, this is the reprint cover, And it's got a quote from Ram Dass on the front, who was one of my heroes of my youth. So even better for a young man, a young writer, to have his own hero endorsing the book on his very first book. And now it's available. And I'm still immensely proud of it, because I can see, looking back on it now, that it really is the seeds of the paralogical philosophy which I've developed now. This idea of the existence of paradox, and that paradox is the nature of reality. And that is embedded in this book. The idea of the Tao, the way it is, the unspeakable mystery of the way it is, expresses itself as yin and yang, which are the two primal opposites, the polarity that paradoxically are two and one at the same time, that interpenetrate, like in the famous sign of the yin-yang, where the black's in the white and the white's in the black, and that everything is arising from that play. So this book is full of paradox, it's full of beauty, it's full of practical wisdom, political wisdom. And I thought I'd just end this little vlog by reading you the very first stanza of my version of Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching. And you can see what I mean. The paradox is there right from the first line, beautiful first line. Tao is not a way that can be pointed out, nor an idea that can be defined. Tao is indefinable, original totality. Ideas create the appearance of separate things. Always hidden, it is the mysterious essence. Always manifest, it is the outer appearances. Essence and appearance are the same. Only ideas make them seem separate. Mystified? Tao is mystery. This is the gateway to understanding.